In a world of perfect illusions, we search for the glitches that reveal the hidden truth behind the mask. Witness the raw, unfiltered moments where reality breaks and the real story begins to emerge. Subscribe today and help us uncover the secrets within the digital shadows.
"You weren't supposed to be back until Thursday," my brother said, staring at me through the 3-inch gap of my own front door. He did not open it wider. He did not step aside. He just stood there, his shoulder pressed against the frame like a bouncer at a club I owned. Behind him, I could see my living room, or what used to be my living room. There were plastic toys scattered across my hardwood floors. A car seat was strapped to my dining chair, and my sister-in-law was sitting cross-legged on my cream couch, scrolling her phone, wearing a look so comfortable it made my stomach drop straight through the floor. "Open the door," I said. My voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of quiet that comes right before something breaks. My brother, let's call him what he was in that moment. Not my brother, not family, but an obstacle shifted his weight. He had the audacity to look inconvenienced. "Look, it's not what it looks like," he started. "It looks like you're standing inside my apartment," I said. Using a key I gave Mom for emergencies. He winced. That was the tell. He knew exactly what he had done. "Diane lost her job," he said, dropping his voice like the neighbors might take her side. "And the lease on their place was already up. We had 2 weeks, and nothing came through. And Mom said you were in Denver for the whole month for the project. And we needed somewhere to land. Just temporarily. Temporarily. That word. I have learned to treat that word the way you treat a fire alarm. You don't stand there and think about whether it's real. You move." "How long have you been here?" I asked. He hesitated. 4 days. 4 days. I had been gone 9. That meant he waited, let almost half my absence pass, and then moved in anyway. That was not desperation. That was calculation. "The kids are already settled," he added, and there it was, the shield. He lifted the children in front of himself like a bulletproof vest. "Lucas and Maya are finally sleeping through the night again. Diane's been really struggling, and this place, you've got 2 extra bedrooms, and it's just you." "Finish that sentence," I said. He didn't. "Move," I said. He opened the door. Not all the way. Just enough for me to squeeze through sideways, like a guest in my own home. The smell hit me first. Diaper cream, takeout containers, and something sour underneath it all. Like wet laundry left too long in the drum. My bookshelf had been pushed against the wall to make room for a pack and play. There were sippy cup rings on my coffee table. The blanket my grandmother made me was bunched up under a child's pillow on my reading chair. Diane looked up from her phone. She did not look sorry. She looked like she was waiting to see which version of me had walked through the door, the pushover or the problem. "Hey," she said. Just hey. Like I was the one who had shown up unannounced. "Hey," I said back, because I was already doing math in my head, and I needed the next 60 seconds to go a very specific way. My brother launched into it then, the whole rehearsed speech. They just needed a month, maybe 6 weeks. Diane had 3 interviews lined up. He had a freelance contract almost signed. They were not trying to take advantage. Family helps family. I had the space. I was never even here. It was just sitting empty. I let him talk. I watched the words come out of his mouth and I cataloged every single one of them, because I had learned something in the years I had spent building a life that looked easy from the outside. People who are about to take something from you always explain why you don't really need it. When he finished, I nodded slowly. "You're right," I said. He blinked. Diane looked up again. "I can't kick you out tonight," I said. "The kids are asleep. It's late." That would be cruel. And I'm not cruel. My brother exhaled so hard his shoulders dropped 2 inches. "Thank you. Seriously, we just need." "But," I said, "we have to do this properly. I can't have 4 extra people living here without documentation. My building has occupancy rules. My renter's insurance has liability clauses. If one of the kids gets hurt, I could lose my coverage entirely." Diane frowned. "We don't need to involve insurance. It's family. It's also my name on the lease," I said pleasantly, "and my credit score attached to this address. So if we're doing this, we're doing it right. Let me make some calls in the morning. I think there's a way to structure this that actually benefits all of us." I said it like an offer. Like I was doing them a favor. My brother looked at Diane. Diane looked at my brother. Some silent calculation passed between them, and they both landed on the same answer. "Yes." "Okay," my brother said. "Yeah, that makes sense." "Great," I said. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed." I walked to my bedroom, which, to their credit, they had not touched. I closed the door. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, and I breathed through my nose for 30 seconds. Then I opened my laptop. I was not going to sleep. I was going to work. I have spent 6 years as a compliance coordinator for a mid-sized logistics company. My entire job is understanding the difference between what a contract says and what it actually means. I read fine print the way other people read menus, quickly, automatically, looking for the thing that will either save me or cost me later. So I knew, without having to look it up, the single most important legal distinction I needed right now. A tenant has rights. A licensee does not. A tenant pays rent, holds possession of a property, and is protected under landlord-tenant law. Evicting a tenant, even a bad one, even one who has done something genuinely terrible, takes months in most states. You need court filings, notice periods, hearings. They can delay. They can appeal. They can make your life unlivable for half a year while you wait for a judge to do what should have been done on day one. A licensee is different. A licensee has a revocable permission to be on a property, tied to a specific condition. A hotel guest is a licensee. A live-in nanny is a licensee. A caretaker who receives housing as part of employment compensation is a licensee. When the condition ends, the license ends. Not in 60 days, not after a hearing, immediately. I opened a document and I started writing. I did not write a sublease. I did not write a roommate agreement. I wrote an independent contractor agreement for residential property management services. I made Diane the contractor because she was the one with the 3 job interviews lined up, which meant she was the one who wanted to look employable. I made the compensation structure simple. Housing, utilities included, in exchange for property management duties, 10 hours per week, including mail handling, package receipt, and light maintenance oversight. Then I buried the important parts in the middle, the way you bury the things that matter when you don't want people to notice them. Clause 6. B. Housing provided herein constitutes compensation for services rendered and does not establish a landlord-tenant relationship. Occupancy is granted solely as a condition of this agreement. Clause 9a. Contractor agrees to 24-hour video monitoring of all common areas for property management and asset protection purposes. Clause 11c. Termination of this agreement for any reason, with or without cause, results in immediate revocation of occupancy license. Contractor and all associated occupants agree to vacate within 24 hours of termination notice. Clause 14. Contractor authorizes a full background and credit check as required for insurance bonding purposes. I read it over twice, then I reformatted it to look more boring. Long paragraphs. Smell la font. I moved the benefits section, housing, utilities, a small monthly stipend to page 1. Where eyes go first and linger longest. I moved clause 11c to page 3. Sandwiched between 2 paragraphs about HVAC filter schedules. Then I printed it from my wireless printer at 1 a.m., and I went to sleep. I woke up before the kids did. I made coffee, moved my grandmother's blanket back to the arm of the chair where it belonged, and waited. My brother came out first, hair still bent from the pillow, looking sheepish, the way people look sheepish when they know they did something wrong, but have already decided not to apologize for it. Morning, he said, opening my refrigerator like it was his. Morning, I said. I found a solution. Want to hear it? He turned around with the orange juice in his hand. Yeah. I walked him through it the same way. I walk clients through compliance reports friendly, clear, focused on the benefits. Diane would be my on-site property manager. Housing was covered. Utilities were covered. There was even a small monthly payment, just enough to look real on paper. In exchange, she would handle whatever the building threw at me while I was traveling for work. That sounds like a lot, my brother said. It's 10 hours a week, I said. It's mostly just being here, which she already is. Diane appeared in the hallway, holding Maya on one hip. She had heard most of it. What's the catch? She asked. I looked her in the eye. No catch. I need someone at this address. You need this address. It works for both of us. She studied me for a moment. I kept my face open and calm, the face I use in negotiations when I need the other person to believe they're winning. Okay, she said. Let's see the paperwork. I slid it across the kitchen island. Diane picked it up. She did what most people do with legal documents. She skimmed the first page, slowed down slightly at the second, and then speed-read the third, because by then her eyes were tired, and she had already made up her mind. She paused once, near the middle, and I watched her finger hover over a line. What's the monitoring thing? She asked, not looking up. Building insurance requirement? I said. I have cameras in the common areas already. Kitchen, hallway, living room. This just makes it official so I'm covered if anything happens. She nodded slowly. She was still nodding when she picked up the pen. She signed her name on the last page. Diane Calloway. Clean, fast, unbothered. My brother co-signed as a witness. I signed my own name and dated it, and then I folded my copy neatly and slid it into my laptop bag. I have to get into the office, I said. I'll forward you the building manager's contact info. Just text me if anything comes up. Wait, you're leaving? My brother said. I work, I said, pulling on my jacket. That's how I afford this apartment. I left. I did not go to the office. I went to the extended stay hotel 4 blocks away, the one I had already booked the night before, and I checked into a room on the 7th floor with a good window and a desk and very fast Wi-Fi. I ordered room service. I opened my laptop, and I pulled up the security app. I had installed the cameras 8 months ago, after a neighbor's unit was broken into. There were 4. Kitchen, living room, front hallway, and the small camera above the front door that covered the entrance. The feeds were crisp and live and running directly to cloud storage, which meant every second of footage was timestamped and saved automatically. I watched. For the first 2 hours, it was almost boring. Diane fed the kids. My brother left, I assumed, for work. Or whatever he was calling work these days. Maya napped in the pack and play. Lucas watched cartoons on the television that I paid for, using the remote I had last touched 6 days ago. Then, just after noon, Diane's sister arrived. I watched her let herself in with a key my brother must have made without telling me, and I noted that for later. The two of them sat at my kitchen island, the same island where Diane had signed the agreement that morning, and they opened a bottle of wine I had left in the back of the fridge. My wine. The good one I had been saving. I watched Diane pour a full glass and lean back in my chair the way you lean back in a chair you think is yours. She actually fell for it, Diane said, and the audio was so clear I could hear the smile in it. Her sister laughed. The caretaker thing? Seriously? She thinks I'm going to be checking filters and signing for packages. Diane took a long sip. I'm not doing anything. What's she going to do? Fire me. And then what? We go to court, and she tries to evict 4 people, including 2 toddlers? No judge in this city. She doesn't know about the judgment, her sister said. Lower now. Diane's voice went flat. No. And she's not going to. I stopped the playback. I went back 15 seconds and listened again. The judgment. I opened a new browser tab and ran the background check I had legally ordered under Clause 14 of the agreement Diane had signed 6 hours ago. The report came back in 40 minutes. I read it twice. Diane Calloway had 3 prior evictions, 2 in the past 4 years. She had an active civil judgment against her for $19,400 in unpaid rent and property damages, filed by a property management firm on behalf of a landlord she had apparently ghosted 18 months ago. There was a collections notice. There was a process server note flagging her as a skip, someone who had been deliberately evading service. She was not a woman who had fallen on hard times. She was a woman who had made a career out of other people's addresses. She was hiding in my apartment because she was running. I sat with that for a moment. Outside my hotel window, the city moved, indifferent and loud. I watched a cab cut off a cyclist. I watched a woman walk a dog the size of a small horse. I thought about Diane sitting in my kitchen, drinking my wine, telling her sister I had fallen for it. I thought about my brother making a copy of my key without asking me. I thought about my grandmother's blanket stuffed under a stranger's pillow. I ordered another coffee and I got to work. The first thing I did was email Diane the termination notice. I kept it precise and professional, the same tone I use when I notify vendors that their contracts will not be renewed. I cited Clause 11C. I cited the monitoring evidence. I cited 3 specific violations that had occurred within the first 12 hours of the agreement: the unauthorized guest, the consumption of property not listed as compensation, the unauthorized key duplication. I gave her 24 hours to vacate. I watched the feed when she read it. She read it standing at my kitchen island, and I saw the moment she understood what she had signed, because her face did something complicated. First confusion, then a flash of something almost like fear, and then the mask came back down, and it hardened into defiance. She called my brother. I couldn't hear his side, but I could hear hers. She can't do this, Diane said. We're tenants. We have rights. She was wrong. She had signed away every right she was counting on. She called a friend who she seemed to think was a paralegal. I watched her nod along to whatever she was hearing. Then her face fell slightly. She asked a question I couldn't make out. She nodded again, slower. She hung up and sat down at my kitchen table with her hands flat on the surface and stared at nothing for a long moment. My brother came home around 6. I watched them argue. His gestures got bigger as the conversation went on. Diane kept pointing at her phone, probably at the termination email, probably at the clauses she should have read at 8 in the morning. when I slid those pages across the counter, and she was too focused on the benefits section to look further. At some point during the argument, my brother tried to call me. I watched his contact name light up on my phone screen, and I let it ring out. He tried twice more. I let it ring both times. Then I made the call I had been thinking about since the moment I read the word judgment in that background report. The collections firm that held Diane's civil judgment had a general inquiry line. I called it and explained, carefully and factually, that I had reason to believe the individual named in their active case was currently residing at my address, and that I had documentation confirming her presence and identity. I gave them the address. I gave them the dates. I told them I had video footage if it was needed. The woman on the phone thanked me in the flat tone of someone whose job had just gotten significantly easier. I watched the feed the next morning from my hotel bed with a cup of coffee balanced on my knee. The process server arrived at 9:14 a.m. He knocked twice. There was a long pause. Then the door opened, and Diane appeared in the frame of my camera, and her face went through 3 different expressions in the space of about 2 seconds. She tried to close the door. He had his foot in it. I'm not going to pretend I felt nothing watching that. I felt something. It wasn't cruelty. It was closer to the feeling of a math problem, finally resolving all the variables settling into their correct positions. She was served. Within 4 hours, they were gone. My brother texted me from the parking garage, the message terse and wounded. Fine, we're leaving. Hope you're happy. I texted back. I hope you find something that works for your family. I mean that. I did mean it. I just meant it in the same way you mean it when you tell someone you hope their flight is smooth right after they've missed it. I gave it 6 hours after his text. And then I went home. The apartment was a mess. There were handprints on my walls at child height, a cereal bowl dried out on the counter, and a single child's sock abandoned in the middle of my hallway like a small white flag. My grandmother's blanket had been moved again. It was on the floor near the couch, scrunched up and half under a cushion. I picked it up. I smoothed it out. I folded it the way my grandmother used to, corners matched exactly, and I laid it over the arm of the chair where it had lived for the past 2 years. I opened every window. I wiped down the counters. I mopped the kitchen floor with the lavender cleaner I keep under the sink, and I stood in the middle of my living room in the early evening light, and I breathed. The building was quiet. My building. My quiet. I thought about what my brother had said when he first blocked my door. You've got 2 extra bedrooms and it's just you. He said it like solitude was a waste. Like space I wasn't filling with other people's noise, was space being squandered. I thought about Diane at my counter, drinking my wine, telling her sister I had fallen for it. I thought about the judgment, the evictions, the skip notice, the person they had brought into my home without asking me, without warning me, without once in the 4 days before I returned wondering whether I might deserve to know. They thought the story was about me being alone in a big apartment. It wasn't. It was about what happens when someone mistakes your stillness for weakness, and your generosity for vacancy, and your absence for permission. I have worked hard for every square foot of this apartment. I worked through the year when I was eating rice, and whatever was on sale, because rent was due, and my savings weren't there yet. I worked through the promotion I nearly didn't get, and the one after that I did. I worked through every business trip and late night, and the 1,000 small indignities of building a life that looks easy once it's built. No one handed me this. No one helped me with a spare key and a moving truck. That evening, I changed the lock code. I called the building manager and removed my brother's emergency contact designation from the file. I sent my mom a brief, factual message explaining what had happened, what I had done, and why, and informing her that the spare key she had been given would no longer work. She called immediately. She cried. She said I was heartless. She said family doesn't do this to family. I listened to the whole thing. I did not argue. I did not explain myself again, because I had already explained myself in writing and she had the email. When she finished, I said, I love you. I'm not angry, but I will not be used again. Not by you, not by him, not by anyone. Then I said goodnight, and I meant that too. Diane now has an eviction on her record that she cannot hide, because it is attached to a signed contract with a termination date, documented violations, and a video archive. The judgment creditors found her. Whatever comes from that is hers to carry. My brother has not spoken to me in 3 weeks. I think he is waiting for me to feel guilty enough to reach out first. He will be waiting a long time, not because I don't love him, but because I have finally understood that love does not mean letting someone stand inside your front door and tell you that you don't need the things you've built. My apartment is exactly as I left it now, minus the sock, which I threw away. Every morning I make my coffee in my kitchen and I look at my living room and I think about how much I used to take this silence for granted. How I used to feel faintly apologetic about it, like having a quiet life was something I owed an explanation for. I don't feel that way anymore. The most important thing I own is not the apartment. It is not the furniture, or the lease, or the savings account that made both of those things possible. It is the clarity I found sitting in a hotel room at 1 a.m, typing clauses into a document while my brother slept in my bed, thinking he had already won. You cannot protect what you are not willing to defend. And you cannot defend it if you have not first decided, clearly and without apology, that it is worth defending. Mine is.